Harbor City had always been loud, restless, alive in a way that made silence feel impossible. So when the sirens began at 8:47 p.m., cutting through the evening air with mechanical precision, Lena Morales felt something colder than fear settle in her chest. It wasn't panic yet. It was confusion. One moment she was finishing homework at the kitchen table while Mateo argued about curfew and Sofia tried to keep peace, and the next every phone in the apartment screamed with an emergency alert ordering immediate quarantine. Outside, traffic lights froze red in all directions as if the city itself had been paused. Military trucks rolled through intersections that had been normal only minutes before. From the window, Lena saw neighbors standing still in doorways, lit by flashing lights and fog rolling in from the harbor. No explanation came with the order. Just shelter in place. Effective immediately. Harbor City was sealed before anyone understood why. Morning didn't bring clarity. It brought confirmation. From the rooftop, Lena and Mateo saw highways barricaded by armored vehicles and bridges lifted as if preparing for war. Ferries remained docked, rocking gently in still water with no passengers allowed aboard. Mayor Evelyn Ross appeared across every screen promising that this was temporary and precautionary, but her words felt rehearsed and hollow. Internet connections slowed. Certain searches returned nothing. Mateo tried accessing independent news sites only to watch them disappear in real time. Sofia attempted to call relatives outside the city, but long-distance lines were jammed. Harbor City was no longer just under quarantine. It was digitally contained. Physically surrounded. Information itself was being filtered. Whatever this was, it had been planned long before the sirens began. Rumors filled the silence faster than facts ever could. Lena's best friend Aisha messaged her about strange neurological cases at North Harbor Hospital, patients collapsing without clear symptoms. Mateo intercepted fragmented police scanner chatter mentioning containment failures before the frequency went dead. No official source confirmed an outbreak, yet ambulances moved through empty streets at night under escort. Lena lay awake listening to distant engines echo between buildings, imagining a single patient whose identity had already been erased. If there had been a patient zero, they were no longer a person. They were a classified detail. And every erased detail deepened the sense that this quarantine wasn't about protecting citizens. It was about controlling what they knew. By the third day, the city felt abandoned. From the rooftop, Lena used binoculars to scan their block and saw boarded windows sealed with government insignias. Patrol vehicles moved slowly, methodically, like they were mapping compliance rather than enforcing safety. There were no crowds. No protests. Just a strange obedience settling over the streets. Even the air felt heavier, thick with waiting. Harbor City's skyline stood intact, but something invisible had shifted beneath it. The absence of noise became more disturbing than sirens ever were. When Mrs. Cardoza's scream tore through the hallway, it shattered whatever fragile calm remained. Lena watched through the peephole as figures in dark protective suits escorted the older woman away while she insisted she wasn't sick. No medical urgency. No visible symptoms. Just removal. Afterward, chemical mist coated the corridor and an official seal was pressed onto her apartment door. The hallway light flickered above scuffed walls that suddenly felt too narrow. Sofia stood behind Lena with fear in her eyes, and Mateo's jaw tightened in silent anger. That night, Lena understood something new. You didn't have to be ill to disappear. Aisha risked sneaking into her uncle's clinic and found neurological scans unlike anything she had studied. Patterns in patients' temporal lobes showed synchronized activity, almost rhythmic, as if influenced by external stimulus. Files were encrypted and replaced with coded entries. When her video call cut abruptly after she whispered that it wasn't a virus but exposure, Lena felt the shift from suspicion to certainty. The city wasn't quarantined because something was spreading physically. Something was being transmitted in ways people couldn't see. At night, static filled the apartment. Radios hissed with faint embedded voices that Mateo carefully filtered into fragments of warning. The repeated word exposure echoed through cleaned audio files. Lena listened through headphones and felt a pressure in her skull she couldn't explain. When she thought she heard her own name buried in distortion, she removed them instantly. The possibility that sound itself could carry influence felt absurd, yet the patterns were there. Something was riding on frequency. Something subtle enough to blend into everyday noise. Mateo's trip to a checkpoint confirmed what they feared. Buses weren't transporting visibly ill citizens. They carried people who looked calm, detached, compliant. No resistance. No confusion. Just blank stares forward. Phones were confiscated. Passengers blindfolded. The industrial district by the docks became the silent destination for those removed. Mateo returned shaken, describing not chaos, but eerie order. That frightened Lena more than panic ever could. Lena began mapping disappearances and discovered clusters around communication hubs, broadcast towers, fiber optic stations, transmission centers. People closest to information infrastructure vanished first. Aisha developed the theory that synchronized neurological activity could be triggered by controlled frequencies. If correct, Harbor City was not under quarantine from disease. It was inside a citywide experiment. At the docks, massive satellite dishes loomed over converted warehouses humming with energy. The low vibration Lena felt wasn't loud but persistent, like pressure behind thought. Through windows she saw equipment pulsing blue in steady rhythm. It wasn't chaotic machinery. It was coordinated. Purposeful. Harbor City wasn't collapsing. It was being tuned. Inside an abandoned office, they found documentation labeled Cognitive Harmonization Initiative. The language was clinical and detached, describing emotional stabilization through broadcast frequency synchronization. Reduced aggression. Increased compliance. Temporary dissociation as an acceptable side effect. Harbor City had become a live testing ground. Quarantine prevented interference while behavioral data was collected in real time. As days passed, calm spread unnaturally. Neighbors who once argued about noise violations now walked quietly in straight lines. Sofia admitted she felt strangely at peace despite fear. Lena fought the sensation by blasting white noise into her headphones. She refused to surrender her anger because anger meant autonomy. And autonomy was exactly what this experiment sought to soften. In subway tunnels shielded from digital frequencies, a small resistance group worked with analog equipment. Engineers and teachers gathered around battery-powered radios immune to broadcast manipulation. Plans formed to disrupt the main transmitter. Lena felt fear, but also clarity. Silence had been weaponized. Now noise would become defense. Under blackout cover, they infiltrated the warehouse perimeter. The vibration intensified near the transmitter core. Screens displayed biometric readings of citizens across Harbor City, heart rates aligning, emotional spikes flattening into uniform lines. It wasn't speculation anymore. It was measurable control. A security officer hesitated when Lena shouted the truth. His expression flickered with doubt as if clarity briefly pierced fog. Mateo disarmed him without violence. That hesitation proved something vital. Exposure wasn't permanent. Influence could be interrupted. Aisha recalibrated transmission output into chaotic interference. Lena pulled the emergency override. Instead of harmony, raw static flooded the network. Sparks erupted as systems overloaded. Across the city, synchronization fractured. Compliance metrics spiked wildly before flatlining into unpredictability. Citizens stepped outside confused, blinking as if waking from deep sleep. Conversations returned hesitantly. Questions resurfaced. Patrol coordination faltered. Silence had been replaced with uncertainty, but uncertainty meant thought. Thought meant choice. Investigations began once digital suppression failed. Documents leaked. Officials resigned. Public trust fractured beyond easy repair. Harbor City reopened physically, but its psychological landscape had changed permanently. Lena watched reporters dissect what had happened while knowing full accountability might never surface. Weeks later, from the rooftop, Lena looked over a city alive again with sound and unpredictability. Mateo stood steady beside her. Aisha sat quietly, thoughtful. Sofia watched traffic below with cautious relief. Yet sometimes, beneath engines and distant horns, Lena imagined she heard faint harmony lingering in the air. Not loud enough to control. Not strong enough to synchronize. But enough to remind her how fragile freedom had been. And how easily silence, if unchecked, could return.